Welcome to the Strong Youth Project, where our mission is to improve organized sport experiences for youth, parents, coaches, and other mentors via education and evidence-based practice.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's make sure this is working. Test 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me okay on that? Is that good? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Appreciate a nice introduction like that. I'm sorry that my parents, who have both passed, aren't here to hear that. My dad would have really enjoyed it, and my mom would have believed it all. So thank you very much. Dr. Hunter is he's the Mr. Benjamin Buttons of the track and cross country team. He still goes and runs with my guys here, and it's only been 25, 26 years since you exhausted your eligibility at BYU, and he still will find time to run with our guys. I really appreciate that. You hear all that and you go, wow, you must be perfect, and quite far from it. In fact, when I heard what this whole Strong Youth Project was all about, I said, yeah, I'd be happy to speak, because I think, when I think of the amazing young people that we have here in the state, the great things they are doing. In fact, I just came from the big BYU Invitational, where I was kind of recruiting, and you're always happy when you've already signed a guy and then he sets the state record in the meet. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking when you haven't signed the guy and you haven't been talking to him, and then you're the Johnny-come-lately. Hey, you did really great. I know you've been talking to other schools, but now talk to us. So we had a really good performance from one of the guys that we had signed, set a state record. So I'm in a really good mood right now. Takes the pressure off, It's often been said that great athletes make great coaches. In fact, a colleague of mine, when she first got the job, Coach Taylor, what the outgoing coach said, well, just remember, great athletes make great coaches. And then she came to me later and said, I wasn't really that great of an athlete. I mean, I was a pretty good athlete, but I wasn't that great. And I said, no, he's saying that the people that he signed that you're going to be working with are great athletes, and you're going to be a great coach as a result of that. She said, oh, okay, I guess that's a compliment. That strive for perfection can get us in trouble. And I'm going to start with Shel Silverstein is my favorite poet. I'm sorry, I know he's a kid's poet, but I think his meanings were a little bit different. He's got a poem that talks about perfection, because I think that as athletes, as parents, as coaches, sometimes our strive for our kids' perfection maybe gets us into trouble. And Shel Silverstein, I think, also recognized this, because he wrote this poem. Almost perfect, but not quite. Those were the words of Mary Hume at her 7th birthday party, looking around the ribboned room. The tablecloth is pink, not white. Almost perfect, but not quite. Almost perfect, but not quite. Those were the words of grown-up Mary, talking about her handsome beau, the one she wasn't going to marry. He squeezes me a bit too tight. Almost perfect, but not quite. Almost perfect, but not quite. Those are the words of old Miss Hume, teaching in the 7th grade, grading papers in the gloom, late at night up in her room. They never crossed their T's just right. Almost perfect, but not quite. 98, the day she died, complaining about the spotless floors. People shook their head and sighed. Guess that she'll like heaven more. Up went her soul on feathered wings. Out the door, up out of sight. Another voice from heaven came. Almost perfect, but not quite. Now, hopefully we have life in perspective and realize that, hey, we're not going to be perfect. Even the best coaches are going to have their off days, right? Even the most amazing athletes sometimes are going to have a tough day. In a marathon, you get dehydrated, and you think you've trained perfectly for this event, and you end up dropping out or not running sub 5-minute miles for 26. Thanks, Ian. And a lot of times when people ask me my PR, I don't tell them 2:10:59. I just leave the 59 off. Yeah, 2:10. Because the second I dropped under 2:11, I was a 2:10 marathoner. We're going to be a little less than perfect. But I think that just acknowledging that in the beginning, realizing that we are going to be less than perfect parents sometimes in encouraging our children, realizing that as athletes, there's no way we're going to be perfect all the time. And as coaches, yeah, we're going to make mistakes, but hopefully we can learn from those mistakes. We can go forward and we can progress rather than being too concerned about that perfection, right? Sometimes in our culture, I think we run into a problem with that. The only thing that I think I came near to perfection is I was really blessed in terms of having awesome coaches and awesome parents and awesome teammates. Perfect? No. They'd be the first ones to tell you. Dad sometimes working on his car. If the wrench slipped and he scraped those knuckles, yeah, there might be a less than sacrament meeting word that would come out of his mouth. But he was so perfect in so many other ways. My mother was someone who liked to come up with her own little sayings. And she'd have a way of helping us remember concepts that we then would apply to in our life. One of her favorite ones, and she didn't really come up with this until I was probably in high school, is TIDE. TIDE. And a TIDE just was an acronym for try a lot of things, identify what you're good at, develop your talents, and then evaluate to see if you can make money out of it. She felt a little bad that the last one was a little bit mercenary in nature, but she also recognized that the practical aspect of it is she wanted us to be well prepared for life beyond high school and beyond college. She was nervous that her daughters or granddaughters might be choosing majors that at the end of the day weren't going to help bring home a paycheck if that was necessary. TIDE. I think we can kind of keep that in mind as some of the things that we talk about a little bit today. One of the things is, as Matt and I were talking about this project, and I think that, I don't know, we've seen a lot, haven't we? And they've probably made the point that we're a little bit concerned because many of our youth are getting into sports, having a great time with sports, but because of one thing or another, they get to a point where, yeah, sports are no longer fun for me. I'm going to drop sports completely, and I'm going to move on to other things. And I think using my mom's acronym of TIDE can kind of get us through that, can kind of avoid the trap of specialization that many of our athletes get into early on. So when I grew up in the 70s up in Ogden, Utah, it wasn't uncommon for, in fact, it was basically you did the sport that was in season that time. So spring of the year, everyone's playing Little League baseball, okay? Fall of the year, most of the guys are playing Little League football. Even little skinny twerps like myself would put those pads on, and we were playing Little League football with all the other neighbors, with all the other kids in the neighborhood. Wintertime rolled around, snow flew. Yes, we'd go skiing because we had the greatest snow on earth here in Utah, right? But also basketball, okay? And that was kind of the three sports we would play throughout the year. Notice I didn't talk about track and field. I didn't start specializing in track and field. I didn't even know that track and field was a sport until, as Dr. Hunter alluded, when I grew up, I was going to be a professional baseball player up until the point that we went from Little League to junior high. And then junior high, something special happens. What happens in junior high? You have to try out for the team, right? You're not automatically on the team if you pay your money. You try out. And I remember one of the more concerning days in my life at that point in time was going to that day when they posted who had made the team and who hadn't made the team, going through that list and looking for Ed Eyestone, every variation of spelling that could possibly occur, and not seeing Eyestone at the end of the list. Asking coach, waiting around, PE coach finally arrived and said, "Hey, Coach Cottle, I noticed my name wasn't on the list. Was there, maybe I'd done so well that he wanted to extend a personal invitation to me or something? Was there something you wanted to tell me?" And he said, "No, unfortunately, we can only keep a handful of 7th graders, and unfortunately, you're not on the team. And so, you're welcome to try out next year, but as for now, you will not be on the team." Well, that was a tough day, and as I walked home by that I gave it one more shot. I walked by the baseball field, and I felt like, well, maybe if Coach Cottle sees me, languishing by the side of the of the baseball field, he'll like, oh, what was I thinking? Eyestone, get out of here. But no, he did not. But as I did walk home, I did happen to walk by our football field. We didn't have a track at our junior high, but we did have a football field, and I noticed there were parking cones on the end zones, and there were kids running laps. And for the first time in my life, I realized there's another sport in the spring of the year besides baseball, and it was track and field. And I went home, and when I told my parents, rather than my dad throwing a fit, going and meeting with Mr. Cottle, demanding that his poor son, who just had an off day during tryouts, get another shot, he said, I think track and field could be a very good sport for you, son. I said, you know, I ran in college. And I swear, up to that point, I don't think that he had even talked about track and field, or the fact that he was a Vandal of the University of Idaho who ran track and field and was a top freshman on the 1941 spring fall team. And we all, well, those history buffs among us know what happened in 1941 in December. He was told that his track career would probably be cut short because the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. And so he was off on to be a paratrooper for 4 years. So the fact that I had to wait to actually talk about track for him to introduce the fact that, yeah, I was a top miler in the state of Idaho back then, kind of tells you, not perfect, but I had a really good basis in terms of parents not overstepping their boundaries in terms of saying, hey, I did this, so you got to do this, right? So specialization, I think, is getting back to what we were referring to before. The fact that I think I had a well-rounded experience with athletics growing up kept it fun, kept it enjoyable, and also I think I developed some abilities, maybe some running faster abilities than just going out and slogging marathon pace, and maybe some basic coordination that had probably came in handy later as I decided to specialize more so in high school and, of course, in college. So I think that's an important concept. Of course, the other aspects, try a lot of different things, have an opportunity. My mom is still ticked off up in heaven that I did not become the next great trombone player. To this day, she thought I should be Tommy Dorsey playing that trombone. And so I had an opportunity to be exposed and encouraged to do things besides just sports, to go ahead and kind of have experiences in music and other things. Try a lot of things, identify what you're good at, or at least what you enjoy, and then once you have identified those things, then that's when we can start developing those talents by working on those things. I appreciate that, Mom. I appreciate that, Dad. I appreciate the support in that. Three of the guys that Ian would know about, I'll throw these names out there. They won't mean anything to you probably. Josh McAdams, Kenneth Rooks, and Kyle Perry. What do those three athletes have in common? The only one who would know would be Dr. Hunter. But they were, oh, okay, yes. They were steeplechasers, fantastic. Extra points for you. I'm going to give you a gift, a parting gift here. And I'm going to do it right here because you knew the answer. And I know this sounds egotistical. I feel like the guy from Harry Potter who's giving out autographed pictures of himself. But this is actually Connor Mounts, Clayton Young, and yours truly, right at the finish line of the Olympic trials this last February 3rd. So we made up a bunch of those. I'm having to pay people to take them at this point. I've got some more here for those of you who might be marathon fans. But okay, so where was I going with that? Yes, so Marianne knew who those three guys were, right? They were all steeplechasers, but to put them a step above that, they all ended up being steeplechase national champions at BYU, which is not an easy feat, okay? It's amazing. Do y'all know what the steeplechase is? Okay, running event, 3,000 meters. They're jumping over barriers that don't knock down if you hit them. You fall down if you hit them. and then you have one water jump per lap. It's a really fun race to watch, and you know, there's always people going down in the water jump, and people love that. Unless you're the coach, and for those of you later, if you want to go, Google Kenneth Rooks, USA Nationals. He does just that. He falls on a barrier, gets up. It went viral last year because he got up and then he won the race, and it kind of made him the new legend that we're talking about a little bit. And he's getting ready for the Olympic trials as well right now. And I think he should make the team as long as he stays on his feet. And he's already shown he can fall off his feet and still make the team. So, but that's not what I would hope for him. So yes, those are three individuals who were steeplechase national champions. In the case of Josh McAdams, not only did he win nationals, but then he won NCAA nationals, but the next year he won USA nationals competing against the pros. And then the year after that, he made the Olympic team, the 2008 Olympic team. And Kenneth Rooks is also, you know, won the NCAA meet, won USA's, and then is in, you know, hopefully going to make the Olympic team coming up here. And then Kyle Perry was just amazing. But all three of those, in addition to being great individuals and winning the national championships at the college level in the steeplechase, were athletes who did sports, who had other primary sports prior to getting into it. Josh McAdams was a high school wrestler, 5th in the state of Ohio, which I think is a pretty competitive state in wrestling. Kyle Perry was a national class mountain biker, and Kenneth Rooks was his junior high quarterback, followed by, played a couple of years of baseball, baseball and basketball in high school before transitioning to track and field. And so it's interesting when I have, if you were to ask my team, what is the best week of the year? Be interesting to see if they would give you the same answer that you think of when you think of the best week of the year. If I were to ask you guys that, you might think, oh, well, it's the week leading into Christmas, or maybe it's the first week of summer vacation, or maybe it's the week of finals, because I love finals so much. That's the best week for sure. But if you were to ask them this, I guarantee you 25 distance guys would give you the same answer. The best week of the year is the week of BYU cross-country camp. The week that we all come together for some team bonding, or as my wife would say, team bondage, because there's not a lot of showers and there's a lot of sweaty guys, where we come together for a week of team camp. And it is a great bonding week. It's a fun week. It's one of the things that, as a coach, I would say, find a way to make your sport fun. We get together. We have a place up in Eden, Utah, which sounds idyllic, right? Eden, Utah, up above the mountains of Ogden. We have a cabin that we go to. We have 25 guys and 2 showers. We stop at Costco prior to going up and buy about $3,500 worth of groceries. It gets more expensive every year for some reason. And then we spend the majority of time running twice a day, 2 workouts, having devotionals every evening, and believe it or not, playing a lot of softball. Why on earth, Coach Eyestone, would you play a lot of softball when you're dealing with these motor morons, you know, these skinny cross-country guys who can't be that coordinated, because obviously you were one? Why is it that you're doing this? Well, even with the risk of injury, and I think the worst injury we had is about 3 years ago, I pulled a hamstring trying to run out a single. And then one of our athletes one time dislocated a finger catching with his non-mitted hand. And we gained a lot of faith on our athletic trainer that year, who was a new guy, and we were going, what are we going to do, as his finger was sticking out this way? And he said, I think I know how to do this. I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do this. Boom, boom, boom. And then we carried him off the field. He was the MVP that day. But we play a lot of softball, and you're going, why on earth would you play a lot of softball? Well, it's fun, okay? And it's not always pretty. I've had more than one national champion, not not strike out just once, but maybe strike out multiple times in a game. Now that's hard to do in slow pitch softball, right? but they've still come shining through when it really counts in terms of on the cross-country pitch or on the track. But I also use it as a way to recognize, okay, who is not in that category of complete motor moron? Who can make a running catch? Who can hit and with power? And who can run the bases pretty coordinated without, pulling his hamstring as he goes to first base? And almost without exception, those guys who perform very well in these softball games, these fun softball games that we're playing, I'm going to turn them into steeplechasers because they're going to have the ability to run endurance, yet also jump and hurdle and be able to spring off the water jump without breaking their necks, basically. And in fact, I've got a freshman this year, a true freshman out of the state of Kansas, who's state champion out of Kansas, broke 4 minutes in the mile indoors as an 18-year-old, and he's going to be, I can't guarantee anything with the steeplechase, but he's one guy that I have pegged on probably making it to the national meet. There's a U20 meet, and there's an under 20 meet that he'll have a chance to go to, and I think he has a good chance of making the U.S. U20 team as well. He is that good, and he was our best softball player. He had the game winning home run in the bottom of the ninth. So I guess my overarching thing with that long story is, don't be afraid to, if you're a parent or if you're a coach, to let your kids experiment with a lot of different sports and have different activities, because overall it's going to help them in the long run. Okay, I keep looking up and realizing I've got a lot more stuff to talk about than I do have time. Quick story, back again, focusing on fun. An athlete came into my office over 10 years ago. He had just got back from his mission. We used to put guys who came back from their mission in what we called lovingly we called this the fat camp, okay? So they were just back from their missions. They were out of shape. They weren't fat. But in many cases, they had gained 20 or 30 pounds. And relative to their pre-mission weight, they were a little down. We no longer call it fat camp. I apologize for that. And we don't really even talk about weight. We just talk more about getting fit. But this particular athlete had gotten back from a mission, had endured fat camp, had gotten back into his fitness level. But he was still having a hard time just making, just running up to the level that he had. It's difficult when you have a very competitive team and then you're coming back and you're trying to find your spot on that team, right? And so I understood that. But he came in and he just said, Coach, I've got a tough stats workload. I don't know that I can keep this up. And I'm going to take it to my Heavenly Father in prayer. But I've been thinking that this might not be where I want to spend the next 4 years at BYU. I need to focus on some other things. And I knew how good this athlete was. I knew the potential that this athlete had. And as a coach, you're kind of going, no, I really need you. But I also want to honor what they want to do, right? And so my message to him was, okay, well, before we make any rash decisions, because you are on scholarship and I don't want you to not have that scholarship and I really think I'm going to need you in the future, I said, take the weekend and then come back. And I want you to think about what drew you to the sport initially when you run at Davis High School. How did you get involved in the sport anyway? Why did you start running this sport? Because you started when you were in 7th, 8th grade, right? And you weren't the best guy. In fact, I remember, you were a little pipsqueak out there. You weren't that great. Why did you start the sport? I said it was fun. I said I enjoyed hanging out with my buddies. I said, well, let's focus on that. Let's not worry about times. I'm not even going to time you for the next few weeks. Let's just focus on the fun with these guys. We got some pretty fun guys on the team. I mean, my daughters know that the crazy stories I come home with. Let's focus on the fun, and then let's see what happens with the running as we focus on the fun. Came back into my office, I think it was only a week and a half later, and I could tell by the expression on his face that he no longer had a question in his mind. He just said, hey, I just wanted to give you up. I just wanted to keep you up to pace on what's going on. He said, I'm going to stick around because now it's fun. He wasn't really running any better, but he was focusing on the fun. I'm glad he stuck around because he finished 6th place in the Olympic Games in 2016. His name's Jared Ward, and he was one of our best runners. He focused on the fun. I took my daughters, this is probably 20 years ago. Yeah, it'd be about 20 years ago. We decided to take a family vacation because Dad's always on the road traveling with the team and whatnot. So let's take some extra special time. It was in the summer. I think camps had gotten over. So we went down to Bryce Canyon. You've hopefully all been to Bryce Canyon, or you know what Bryce Canyon is. It's got these amazing, red rock and hoodoos down there. And there's a canyon, there's a trail that runs right alongside the canyon you can go on. And I said, hey, Dad's going to be a big spender here. We're going to make this really memorable. We're going to go horseback riding here at Bryce Canyon. And so, yeah, we checked at the local horse dealer, and and they had a great family rate. You know, we could take the 5 or 6. Liza, did you get a ride on Mom's? Maybe it was before you were old enough. Anyway, but there was a cutoff time where my older daughters, this is favorite daughter number 4 that was there. Okay, this is favorite daughter number 5. Just graduated with a master's degree in accounting. Let's give it up for her. I won't mention that she was the #1 student in the program because she's getting tired of me saying that. But so we decided, let's make this memorable, and at least 4 of the daughters. But there was a cutoff point. I think you had to be 7 or probably 8 years of age to get your own horse. Now, these horses had been on this trail for the last 10 years. They knew it backwards, forwards. They were going to go on that trail with or without any encouragement or help, or with the biggest rookie on their back ever. But they did have this age grade where you had to be 8 years old. Maybe it was 7 years old. Maybe it was 5 years. I don't know what it was. But you had to have an adult with you if you're below that certain age. And so I said, Claire, you and I are going to ride this horse. And she wasn't that excited about it because all her older sisters got to ride their own horse. Now she had to, be embarrassed and ride with Dad. But I was on the saddle. She was on the saddle in front of me. I gave her the reins. She got a clippity-clop around, boom, boom, bump as we went around. And I was behind her, and I was going, this is great. It's such a bonding experience. Daughter and dad. Daddy-daughter date, traipsing around on the horse. And so on occasion, I'd say, oh, look at those hoodoos, honey. Isn't that amazing? Or we clippity-clopped through a little small little stream. It was about 2 inches deep. And it's like, oh, Claire, you did a great job getting us through that. Or, wow, isn't this fun? And after doing that for a while, I would throw out something, connecting with my daughter, having this special moment. And, hey, Claire, oh, that was fun. That was a good way to avoid that rock. Shh. Said, oh. Then we went a little further, and she went through the water. Oh, thanks, Claire. We didn't get wet on that one. Shh. Oh, okay, Claire. Oh, I think it looks like we're going to go back to the barn now. Shh. I said, Claire, why do you keep saying shh to me? She said, I'm pretending you're not here. That put me in my spot right there, right? Okay, and I think sometimes, and I'm speaking to parents now, and sometimes coaches to some extent, that in our desire to have our kids succeed in their athletic endeavors, that instead of riding on the saddle and letting them have the reins and being there to keep them from falling off the horse, we actually are grabbing the reins and showing them how they should be navigating their horseback ride. And my counsel to you parents and to your coaches is make sure your children get to hold the reins. Yes, we need to be there for safety's sake. We need to make sure that everything's good with coaches and whatnot. Do we need to be there every practice, and do we need to be spouting my kid should be the starter? No, that's holding the reins, right? So let's keep our kids safe, but let's let them hold the reins. And maybe we ask ourselves prior. Okay, again, I'll use my parents because I think, again, not perfect, but pretty close to being perfect in that realm, is, Dad, before meets, this is once I admitted that I was going to actually do the sport that he did in college. It'd be easy because he's a college Division I athlete, right, to say, well, let me tell you about all the workouts that I used to do, and I'm not really happy with the way you raced that particular race, or whatever. Yes, he was there, and he could be a sounding board if I approached him. That was him on the back of the saddle keeping me safe. But never did he say, I really question what Coach Zabriskie is having you do right now. Or Coach Peterman, no, I never would have had you run that strategy in that, right? Didn't ever hear that. But did he occasionally, every race morning, have those pancakes with whole wheat batter and bee pollen and alfalfa sprouts? Probably not a choice that most of us would make, but he put them in there. Those pancakes were about a pound each, right? Because he felt like he was doing his part as a nutritionist, and it probably helped at the end of the day. That was a good role for him to have. That was him sitting on the saddle, but he was letting me take the reins, except sometimes when I got the dry heaves after the second bite. So let's make sure our kids have the reins when they're in the sport, okay? So, wow, I think I've taken most of my time, okay? So I got another couple stories, but we'll dispense with those stories for now. We did want to allow a couple minutes for Q&A. In wrapping up, I would just say thank you. The fact that you are here at this conference probably means that you are that parent that is sitting on the saddle, keeping their kids safe, but letting them ride the horse. Or if you're a coach, you're realizing that you're not perfect, but that you can do a better job probably, and that sometimes the best coaching is a collaborative effort that you're involved in. Or if you're an athlete, you realize that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to win every race, but you just work as hard as you can in practice and then enjoy the process rather than the actual product. And if you enjoy the process, then your improvement will take care of itself. No, we don't need to be perfect in this. I'll give you one last quote to end it. We started talking about perfection. Let's end with it. For those of you who have read East of Eden, one of my favorite books because it just has quotes galore in it, is the famous John Steinbeck message of, now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good, okay? May we all be good. May we all progress and be the best that we can, is my challenge to all of you. Do it. Yeah, you can applaud now and then we'll do Q&A. So Matt had asked if maybe 5-10 minutes, whatever. I know at quarter after we were lunch and we're hungry and we've been waiting all day. But there was some Q&A time provided. Yeah, come on up.
We certainly have a few minutes for Q&A. I suspect that many of you have questions you'd like to ask.
And if you don't be, as you can tell, I'm a real intimidating character. My athlete's nickname for me is Easy E, so that kind of tells you a little bit about where we go. But do any of you have any questions about the guys getting ready for the Olympics, or about your own training, or about coaching, or what it's been like 25 years at BYU or anything? Yeah, Marianne.
I can't remember. Did you talk about your daughters? Did they all?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because yes, and I'm putting my parents as examples of these, not perfect, but very supportive. Mom being a little upset that I didn't become the next great trombone player. Dad being very happy. And my parents, you know, the little league games and stuff that I went to, I don't know that my mom made it to more than a couple. That wasn't because of her lack of love for me or whatever, but she was a working mother, so a lot of times she was still at work at the time. My dad would make it to a lot of the races. Once I started running really well, he thought that was really cool, and my mom would come as well. And my dad would be wearing a cowboy hat, and I knew whenever I ran by the parent area in a cross-country course is that area where the course comes through about 3 times, and you know, because the parents are too lazy to go out to the outer portions of the course, they're just going to be there. lost my microphone. And so my dad would always be at the parent area wearing his cowboy hat. And I would usually hear, as I ran by, he would say something like, "Run them into the ground, Ed, run them into the ground," which I'm not exactly sure what that meant, but I think it just meant run really hard so they would die or something like that. So they were very supportive in that way, and no one was more excited, and they traveled to both Olympics that I participated in. But my daughters chose their own path. I mean, TIDE was kind of the overarching philosophy, if not necessarily acronym, that we had in our home. And my oldest daughter was probably the most athletic, or at least loved that the most. She was basketball player. She loved basketball, and she ended up walking on at BYU and went and played at BYU for a year. Played at Mountain View during the glory days of Mountain View women's basketball, and was good. Ran cross country, I think, one season, and then her younger sister, I think, came close to beating her in a race, and she went, "Nah, maybe not." And I don't know that that had anything to do with it. Yeah, so that's Erica, the oldest. And she runs. The good news is, and part of this whole project is make sure that as adults they're still active, and she's still very active, runs with her kids. She has 4 kids now, and she'll run with a baby stroller or on her own or whatever. So she ultimately came to the from the dark side to the true sport. And then Andrea was a runner on the cross-country team and did very well, was on a state championship team, was a 6 or 7 girl on the team. Had no aspirations to run in college, but really enjoyed it all the way through high school, and kind of does the same thing. Ellie was daughter number 3. She also ran on some state championship cross-country teams, was probably, I hate to compare them, but if you look at PRs, she was a little faster than Andrea was, so that was good. Daughter number 4, quick story on daughter number 4. Really into theater, okay, really into theater. She had a junior high class, and it's tough when you grow up with the name Eyestone, at least it was, 15 years ago, because it had some sort of relevancy in actual, some people would know. And I taught a class at BYU that all PE majors had to take, so they knew Eyestone. So when this person that I had taught then was teaching PE at the junior high that my daughter went, she recognized, "Oh, Eyestone. Is your dad?" "Yes, he is." "Oh, I had a class from him." "That's great." He was an Olympic marathon runner. So they had to do the mile run. She ran the mile run. When she finished the mile run, the teacher, in all seriousness, came up to her and said, "Are you adopted?" So no desire, but still, to this day, now she and her husband are finding it, hey, it's fun to go to the gym. It's fun to have a good time. And she's very involved in theater still. In fact, she just got hired to work in the theater department. Daughter number 5 is sitting right there. She was a great basketball player. Could have been an awesome runner, too. Ran a little bit, right? I twisted your arm to run some junior high track. But played basketball, enjoyed basketball, and then decided, hey, I want to be a dancer. So for the last couple of years, she transitioned. And part of the problem why she didn't play more basketball, I think, is because the specialization that was taking place a little bit, right? In the high school, where you couldn't really do dance and basketball, and she had other things she wanted to do. And that's an unfortunate thing, because we're losing some of our athletes because of that. And then daughter number 6, favorite daughter number 6, I also bribed to run cross country one summertime, and she did it for the summer, and then she was done. But yeah, so I think they got a pretty healthy perspective about sport, and are still involved in it to the level, at least as high a level as they were, pretty much in high school. So I feel successful in that regard. Thanks for that question, Marianne. Yeah.
So I know you have had athletes who have dealt with like freedom.
Yes. Yeah.
As a coach, how do you balance you want them to get healthy again, but you also they want to keep training and stay fit to compete at the
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough because a part of our sport, particularly distance running, is the overuse injuries are prevalent. And it's that fine line, right? You want to get as close to that edge of the cliff without falling off, getting injured. But you realize that you probably do have to work to a certain extent to maximize your fitness. And I think ultimately, hopefully you learn a thing or two, both as an athlete and as a coach, and you go, okay, this level of mileage in the past has always resulted in injuries. Let's start here, which is way below the threshold, and then let's add in a lot of cross-training, and then let's move up. And that's kind of what we're doing with Davin right now and Creed. And I think that's probably the problem. You know, instead of working out 3 hard times a day or 3 hard times a week and then doing other training, you know, maybe we just work out 1 really quality session per week, 1 good thing on the long run on the weekend, and then do a lot of cross-training in between. So hopefully you learn. That's why it should be a collaborative effort, and then you're taking notes on yourself as an athlete or on your athletes if you're a coach. Yeah. Yes?
What was your number 1 motivation to get to the Olympics?
I think it's funny because if you would have asked me prior to being cut from the baseball team, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And I, you know, was really on course for that all the way through Little League, which means not really, okay? But I had some good games. I had some good seasons. I was MVP a couple times, okay? So of course, when you're that age, you think that's going to be it. But when I got cut from the baseball team, I'm sure if I was that passionate about it or that realistic about it, then I would have gone, well, I'm going to show him, because didn't Michael Jordan, didn't that happen to him one time? He got cut from the team, and then he came back, and he was stronger and whatnot. I didn't go that route. I started running. And you know what was probably the number 1 thing? What did Mom say? Try a lot of things. Identify what you're good at. And when we did that tryout in track, suddenly I could beat everybody my age in the 800 or above. I could beat most of the guys older than me in the 800 and above. I could beat, but I realized, okay, if I keep at this, by the time I'm the senior, I'm going to at least be the best guy in the school. So I think it came down to try a lot of different things, identify what I was good at, and then develop your talent. I had great coaches, great mentors, and I then made, you know, finally going through puberty between my sophomore and junior year, where I was 40th at state before, and then I was winning state by 30 seconds or more from then on. I think that all came together. Yeah. Sometimes it all comes together, and sometimes it doesn't. It's interesting, though. I had a class called Success, and you can't negate the negative. You can't negate the psychological component as well. And maybe you had, I don't know if you had a psychology person that talked to them or not. I had a class, and again, a quick story that usually ends up being long, but I had a class in junior high as a 7th grader. It was called Success. Okay, they had this class called Success because when you go from elementary school to junior high, all of a sudden you're walking around the hallways and guys have beards, right? And then you're just this little tiny guy who hasn't even thought of growing. And then, and so they have this class called Success where they talk about, you know, self-esteem and setting goals, and you're good enough, and you don't need to be perfect, and all those great things. You know, back in my day, there was a poster of a cat that was hanging on a branch, and it would say, "Hang in there, baby." You know, so that you know you can go. You'd have to go back to 70s pop culture to get that one, but yeah. So I had this class, and one day the teacher came in and said, "Today you're going to write a letter to yourself." Okay, we were 7th graders. You're going to write a letter to yourself. This was like probably a month after I had been cut from the baseball team, and now I was on the track team. And Mr. May said, you're going to write a letter to yourself about what things are going to happen to you in the next 6 years. And we're going to put this in a time capsule, and you're going to open it your senior year. And so I said, okay, great. And we dutifully took the hour to write a letter to ourselves, sealed it up, forgot about it. Boom, 6 years fly by at that age, right? Or at least at this age, 6 years fly by. But 6 years go by, I'm sitting in Noreen Francis's college prep class, senior year. Teacher comes out, Noreen, she's dropping envelopes on different desks. Not everybody had Mr. May's success class, but I did. So she said, yeah, these are letters. And at first I go, oh, another one from the Army or whatever. But then she said, no, these are letters that you wrote to yourself 6 years ago as 7th graders at T.H. Bell Junior High, and now you're seniors at Bonneville High School. So open them up. So I opened mine up. I pulled it out, and I unfolded it. And yes, the handwriting looked vaguely familiar. Said, Dear Eddie. And that was a tip-off right there, because I hadn't gone by Eddie for 6 years, because Eddie's kind of a diminutive name. I'd gone by Ed. since my 8th grade year on, right? So the only people who call me Eddie still are my sisters, right? Or somebody from my family. So dear Eddie, you are now a senior in high school, unless you dropped out. Ha, ha, ha. I was just as big as smart A back then as I am now. You are the best runner in the high school. Okay, that's good. That's good positive self-esteem. At the time, I wasn't the best runner in the junior high, but I knew by the time I was a senior I was going to be the best runner in the high school. You are the best runner in the state. Wow, this kid had some ambition. By that time, I was the best runner in the state. You are going to be an All-American in high school. Wow. I had just the fall before been named an All-American in cross country. You're being recruited by colleges across the land. You will someday run in the Olympics. And I looked at that and went, how did I know that as a 7th grader, okay? And even if I look at it now as a senior saying you will someday run in the Olympics, that wasn't really gonna happen. How does that, even the kid that ran a really fast time, I think he'll make it to the Olympics. But even all the other state champions, it's a big reach, okay, that left, because they only take 3. But I believed that it was gonna happen. So the power of actual belief is not a bad thing, okay? It's not a bad thing. As long as your life doesn't get turned upside down by that, and as long as you're not neglecting other areas in your life because of this, what some might call pipe dream, it's fun to have goals. And so getting back to that, identify the things that you're good at, develop your talents, and if it leads you to accomplishing some of the goals that you set for yourself, more power to you. Or if it just leads you to enjoy the process and you get as good as you can be and you come up short from that goal, big deal. It's still a great thing. I've told my guys on the team this before, some of whom have gone on and made the Olympic team, some who have not, is that not everyone who sets a goal to run in the Olympic Games runs in the Olympic Games. That's okay. But everyone who runs in the Olympic Games has set the goal to run in the Olympic Games, okay? So it's okay to set the goal and then not make it, but I guarantee you're not gonna make it unless it's become a goal for you. So have big dreams, go for it, put things in perspective, realize you don't have to be perfect, just try to be as good as you can, and I think at the end of the day, you're gonna have a great life, okay? That's it. I think we can.